everyone. I am the lawyer, aka Wakili Tari Karanja.
And I am the layman, Gashao Patrick. Wakili, do you have a
Yes,
blackout? Are the lights back where you are?
finally they're back. I mean, we almost didn't make it for this recording, isn't it?
Man, the lights went out. I ran downstairs. I was sure maybe I'd run out of units. I'm like, I just bought units the other day. I'm like, oh, somebody's using my units, I swear. Only to find that the whole thing is also blacked out, the whole switchboard. So
Yes,
I'm
I
glad the
think
lights came back.
it was almost a national blackout. I believe there are several people who also did not have power across the country.
You know what I find funny about blackout is it's like rapture. You say tomorrow morning, oh, did you have a blackout? And guys are like,
Yeah.
what blackout? Like one part of the country, wow, okay. Especially the guys in the village are just fine. This is how
Yeah,
rapture must
someone,
happen. I think people go to heaven.
someone will put a comment and say, in Lavington there are lights. So
Yeah. And then you are realizing, oh.
Oh well, but
Anyway,
you have power now?
I do.
Very good,
And
because I'm hoping
happy.
you'll be able to. Yes.
Yeah, you're hoping that I'll be able to?
To read our question for today.
Oh yeah, man. And the question for today is it's been hot this afternoon. And it's just a question about the quack doctor, Mugo or Wairimu. Do you remember that story, Wakili?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
So, according to Capital News, I'll read for you.
Okay.
James Mugo or Wairimu, the fake doctor who operated a clinic in Nairobi without a license, has been sentenced. The quack doctor was jailed for 3 years after a court found him guilty of operating a clinic without a license from the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. And the magistrate, Martha Nanzushi, issued the ruling after upholding the evidence adduced by the prosecution witness. The court, however, gave him an option of paying our Kenya shillings 1.4 million fine to be set free. Mugo was also convicted of operating a medical laboratory that was not registered by the Kenya Laboratory Practitioners Board. And people just couldn't believe that he's been jailed for 3 years.
People couldn't believe, or you can't believe?
I am people are I. You know, with hopefully I speak for the masses.
So what is it that is so shocking? I mean, if I understand it correctly, this Mugo Wairimu was tried in court. He was found guilty, or he pleaded, or he was convicted on his own plea of guilty, and he was sentenced. To me, that sounds like exactly how the criminal justice system should work.
Oh man, it's just that the sentencing just feels inadequate. This man, first of all, operated a clinic with no. Did you know that in Kenya, a doctor goes to school for 6 years, then goes for internship for an entire year, then they are posted somewhere or gets a job. And in all this, the doctor is dealing with lives. He was treating people, and there's even an accusation that he was sexually violating his patients or rape, let me put it that way. And after all this, Wakili, this man gets jailed for 3 years or can pay a fine of 1.4 million Kenya shillings only. Money, I think, what a doctor makes in a year, maybe. I mean, it just feels inadequate. Let me put it that way.
Okay, I see what you're struggling with, and maybe then what we can talk about is when it comes to determining how to sentence someone for a criminal conviction, what
Mm-hmm.
is it that the court will take into account? Because probably if we look into that, then we can see whether this sentence is adequate or inadequate. And like usual, I think it's good to give you a list of things that the court would consider. Makes it easier to remember. So get out your pen and paper and see if we can put these down. So there are four things that I would say are principles that a court would follow when it is determining how to sentence someone. Of course, there are many other things which happen, but when you consider the principles, that they usually guide the court. So the first principle is proportionality. And this really means that the punishment which is given should be proportional to the offending behavior, the behavior that brought about the charge.
That is the principle that was not applied. That is it.
Well,
that is it.
So you see, when it comes to proportionality, okay, that principle of proportionality is also checked by a second principle, and that second principle is called uniformity. Essentially, when the court is passing judgment, or when it is sentencing the convicted person, they're going to look at how have other convicted persons with similar facts been sentenced, because there has to be uniformity in how sentencing is done. You don't want to find one person was given 10 years, another person was given 1 year, and there's no consistency. And that consistency would make it very difficult for an accused person to have an idea of what to consider. I mean, as much as, yes, you're punishing this person, there must be consistency in how people are punished. There can't be bias, there can't be prejudice between one convicted felon and the next. So as much as proportionality, you are saying it seems it wasn't followed, remember this, it was not observed. Remember, the court also has to consider uniformity and equality. So they will look at previous cases which had similar facts, and they'll see what kind of sentencing was passed down there.
Yeah.
But more than that, there is also a third principle. And this principle is that in how these sentencing guidelines, or in how the specific fines or years a person is sentenced, and how it's the court arrives at this, there must be accountability and transparency. And basically this means they can't just be picking these things from the air. Now, normally what happens is, for every offense in law, there's usually created the penalty when convicted of that offense. So if you find these charges against Mugo Wairimu, operating a clinic without a license, or trying to pass off as a doctor, those charges are offenses in law, and there is a prescribed penalty. So when I talk about accountability and transparency,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are these prescribed, as you're calling them, penalties? Almost like if I open the book of law, if there's something like that, I see if you do this, this is what happens. If you do A, B is the consequence.
Yeah, pretty much. You'll find this is the offense and this is the penalty. Okay. So to determine how to sentence, that is what the court shall do. They'll open the specific section in the law that speaks about the offense. They will see what the prescribed penalty is, and based on that, they will now pass the judgment.
Okay, what is the fourth one? Did you discuss the fourth one?
So the fourth one is inclusiveness. Now, previously, what would happen is that the victim did not have a part to play in how sentencing was done. But after we promulgated the new constitution, the 2010 constitution, the victim now has an opportunity to be heard, to be included in the sentencing process. So this principle of inclusiveness essentially ensures that the victim's voice is heard, and it's usually done through what we call a victim impact assessment.
A victim impact assessment.
Exactly. So those are the 4 principles that are being considered when the court is engaged in the sentencing process. And by considering those things, they ensure that whatever final sentence is meted out, is within those principles and guidelines. So as much as you might say this, this was inadequate, okay, I am sure the court followed these principles in establishing the sentence that they finally passed.
Today, Wakili, I have caught you. Let me tell you why. Today, I decided to be a good layman and do some homework. And I found this penalty for unregistered and unlicensed persons practicing from the Medical Practitioners Board. And under Section 22, the first article says that a person who is not registered or licensed, including a person aiding or assisting therein, under this act, and makes or produces or causes to be made or produced any false or fraudulent presentation or declaration, either orally or in writing, commits an offense and shall be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 5 million shillings or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years or both. This sentencing of today, nothing like that has happened. There's no 5 years and there's no 5 million. He still got away with it. He still got away with it, Wakili. You keep telling me that if you do A, B should apply. The offense that this guy has, the quack doctor has committed, warrants that he gets 5 years or 5 million or both. How come we don't see any of those?
All right. So, first of all, I'm very impressed that you went and found that specific section. Well done to you.
Thank you very much.
But let me clarify. So let me clarify something. When it comes to the sentencing, which is prescribed in law, you will find most times then the figures which are given are not mandatory minimums. And if that is the case, if that is the case, then the court has discretion as to what they should actually sentence.
Wow.
In fact, those figures that you have just read for me, the 5 years and the 5 million shillings, those are the maximum penalties the court can mete out on an offender. But as far as minimum goes, the court has quite some discretion. I mean, I think you might have seen a case whereby a man was being accused of smuggling his wife out of Kenyatta National Hospital, and although he was convicted, I think even on his own guilty plea, the sentence he was given essentially had him walking out of court the very same day, a free man. So, but the court won't just apply this without consideration. There are a few things that the court will look at. One, they will look at the status of the accused person in terms of his health, in terms of where he's, where he has been. In this case, you find that this guy was in remand for 2 years already. So he had already served 2 years. They'll also look at whether this person is remorseful for his actions. They will also take a look at whether there has been some form of restitution to the victims or some attempt at that. And you can see in this case also the accused person, he was convicted on his own guilty plea, which shows that he has accepted that he did something wrong. And of course, they will also look at whether this person is a first offender or not. And in this case, I think you can see that in other media, it's been reported that that was one of the things which came up, that this is a first offender. So all these things come into consideration when the court is making a determination on what kind of sentence to give out. So as much as you are very correct that the law does prescribe those sentences that you have read, those are the maximum and not the minimums.
Oh, Akili, man. This, however, always get you out of jail. So out of jail card. In any case, I don't think 3 years is fair. Let me just put it that way.
Okay, I hear you, but there's something we need to clarify, because this story, I went back and looked at it, and it seems that the 3 years is being reported in some media, but in other media it's being reported as 11 years. And when I dug further, I discovered that what actually happened is that this doctor was accused of, he was charged with several offenses. I think there were a total of 6 offenses, and each offense had its own sentencing. So what happened, the way it's being reported in the story that you read, they have just taken the sentence which had the highest time, which was 3 years, and they have said that that's what this person is going to serve. But in actual sense, he was convicted of, I think, 6 different offenses, and the cumulative total of all those offenses is actually 11 and a half years.
So does that mean then he serves the longest term? Let me say, if, for example, he's been sentenced for 3 years, and for not having a license, but maybe for something, another offense, he's been sentenced for 6 months. Does that 6 months, those 6 months, are they in the 3 years? That's what I mean to ask.
So what happens is, when you are convicted of multiple offenses, the sentencing that is passed out should be served cumulatively, unless the court specifically says that it should be served concurrently. So cumulatively means you finish the first 3 years, then you finish the 6 months, then you do another 12 months, then you do the other 1 year. So they're all cumulative. And that's why I was telling you that the actual time he might serve is 11 and a half years.
And even if it's cumulative, is the fine for one or for all? Like this 1.4 million?
No, I think that's for all.
That is quite interesting then, because if it's not for everything, can I pay part? Can I pay part of the fine and not all, and maybe serve 6 months instead of 3 years?
It's possible, because each offense carried its own penalty. So if you can pay some fines and pay off that penalty, yeah, then it's possible you'll be able to meet the penalty for a specific offense, a specific charge.
I have nothing more to add, Wakili. Today I thought I had it, but it seems you can always get out of jail, you specifically. And for listeners and viewers, there you have it, that the principles for making a judgment are 4: proportionality, uniformity, accountability, and inclusiveness. That is also that the victim is also involved. And in addition to that, the court has, what do Wakili say, the liberty to determine how they apply this, all the same. And is it like a final sentencing? When you're sentenced, it's over, Wakili? Is that how it works?
Well, any of the parties could always appeal.
Oh yeah.
And if they have an
Yeah.
argument case, then, all that could change.
Okay, maybe we have not seen the end of this, but for now, I would like to say thank you very much, Wakili. Mm, I must accept that you have, today I feel like you have escaped, but this case, I'm very intrigued and I would like to see how it goes on. And on behalf of Swala Nyeti, goodbye.
Goodbye.